Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into a seriously fascinating topic today, market research. We're going to explore exactly how businesses peer into the minds of consumers to figure out what makes us tick, what makes us click, and ultimately, what makes us buy.
Here's our roadmap. We've got 6 parts. 1. Objectives and the why. 2. Primary versus secondary research. 3. Qualitative versus quantitative data. 4. The mechanics of sampling. 5. Ethics in market research. And 6. A final reflection. Let's get to it.
Okay, Section 1, Objectives and the why. Why do we even do this research in the first place?
By the end of our explainer today, you're going to know exactly why companies invest so heavily in market research. You'll be able to analyze the pros and cons of primary and secondary methods, easily distinguish between qualitative and quantitative data, explain the nuts and bolts of sampling, and finally evaluate the tricky ethical lines that researchers just cannot cross. Now, to understand why any of this matters, we have to ask a massive question. Do companies actually know what consumers think? Back in the early 1980s, Coca-Cola was losing market share to Pepsi, right? So they launched this top-secret initiative called Project Kansas. They ran massive taste tests which showed consumers actually preferred the sweeter taste of Pepsi. So Coke tested a new, sweeter recipe. They called it New Coke, and focus groups told them they absolutely loved it. But when they replaced original Coca-Cola with New Coke on the shelves, it was a colossal disaster. I mean, people were furious. They felt like their beloved classic brand was just being thrown in the trash. The data said people liked the taste, but the researchers completely missed the deep emotional loyalty consumers had to the original product. After just 77 days, they had to bring original Coke back. And you know that New Coke disaster? It perfectly highlights exactly why organizations carry out market research. Number 1, to reduce the huge risks of launching new products. You literally do not want to spend millions creating something nobody actually wants to buy. Number 2, to predict future demand changes, like anticipating a recession or maybe a demographic shift. Number 3, to explain sales patterns of existing products. If your sales suddenly drop 8% over a year, you need to know why so you can fix it. And number 4, to assess favored designs, flavors, and promotions before doing a full-scale rollout. Basically, market research is a business's early warning radar system. Moving on to Section 2, primary versus secondary research. Let's look at where this data actually comes from. So the crucial point here is understanding the difference between these two sources. Primary research is first-hand data collection. It's research you do yourself, specifically tailored for your firm's exact needs. Secondary research, on the other hand, is second-hand data. This is information that already exists out there in the world, originally collected by someone else, like the government, often for a totally different reason. Think of it like this. Primary is asking the question yourself. Secondary is reading someone else's answer. A really classic example of primary research is just asking your customers to fill out a survey. But it also includes things like one-on-one interviews, focus groups, or even direct observation. Literally standing in a supermarket and timing how long people wait in the checkout line. The massive advantage here is that the data is totally up to date, incredibly relevant, and entirely confidential. Your competitors don't have it. But it's expensive. It takes a ton of time and money to design the surveys, hire the interviewers, and crunch that fresh data. Now, it's super interesting to see how modern giants are evolving their primary research. Take Procter & Gamble. They make herbal essences and a million other things. Their market research budget is actually larger than most companies' total sales. But even they realize traditional surveys are just getting too slow. Plus, consumers are way less willing to take them nowadays. So P&G shifted gears. They started searching social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook. By setting up simple keyword searches for their brands, they get instant, real-time feedback on what consumers are naturally talking about. It's a brilliant, game-changing way to gather primary insights much faster and usually for a lot less money. On the flip side, let's talk about secondary research. Imagine you're a U.S. food exporter and you want to start selling products in Trinidad and Tobago. Before you even book a flight or pay for a single expensive primary survey, you can just look at existing secondary data. Like, you can instantly see that supermarket chains dominate over there, with 61% of sales. Boom, you've got direction. Secondary data comes from government publications, academic journals, media reports, things like that. It's usually cheap, often free, and you get it immediately. But here's the catch. It might be completely out of date, or it might just be slightly off from answering your specific business question. All right, Section 3, qualitative versus quantitative data. What kinds of answers are we getting? The core difference here is actually really straightforward.
Quantitative research is all about the hard numbers. It answers the question, how many? It's objective numerical data that you can measure. For example, how many pairs of running shoes did we sell last May? Qualitative research, however, answers the big why. It explores the subjective stuff, opinions, attitudes, and beliefs. Like, why do customers actually prefer our running shoes? Is it because they're comfortable or just because they're trendy right now? Quantitative gives you the hard stats from massive surveys. Qualitative gives you the deep underlying motivations from a small focus group. Let's look at a real-world case study to see how a company blends both of these. Safaricom is a leading telecommunications company in Kenya, and they were suddenly facing some really fierce new competition. So they utilized a strict 6-step research process. First, they defined the problem. They were losing market share. Second, they developed an approach, brainstorming things like lowering call rates or maybe hosting charity events. Third, they made a decision. They needed data to see if exclusively launching the Apple iPhone 3G would give them the edge. Fourth, they collected the data, which was likely a mix of quantitative surveys on pricing and qualitative focus groups on brand appeal. Fifth, they analyzed those trends. And sixth, they built the final report. Because they structured this research so rigorously, that iPhone launch was a massive success in targeted areas of Nairobi. Section 4, the mechanics of sampling. How do we choose who to actually talk to? Well, a sample is simply a small group of people selected to represent the entire target market. Let's be real. It is completely impossible and way too expensive to survey every single person in your demographic. So you have to use a sample. But you can't just ask the first 10 people you bump into on the street, right? If you do, your data is going to be incredibly skewed. You need a reliable method to make sure your sample actually looks like the broader population. So let's break down the 3 most common sampling methods. First up, random sampling. This is literally like pulling names out of a hat. Everyone in the target population has an equal chance of being randomly picked by a computer. It's great for reducing bias, but your sample might accidentally end up not representing the whole group. Second, we have quota sampling. This is where you segment the population, say by gender, and you tell your interviewer to specifically find 200 females and 300 males. It's quick, it's cost-effective, but the interviewer might just walk up to the friendliest-looking people, which immediately introduces bias. Finally, stratified sampling. This is the gold standard. You map out the different layers or strata of a population, and you draw a random sample proportionally from each of those layers. It perfectly mirrors the actual population, making it highly accurate. But man, it is complex and time-consuming to set up. Section 5, Ethics in Market Research, the Rules and the Boundaries. In today's world of big data, it is so easy for companies to cross the line. So there are several non-negotiable ethical rules here. Researchers absolutely must gain permission. They have to make sure data collection doesn't cause emotional harm. Asking sensitive health or financial questions requires extreme care. Researchers have to stay totally objective. They can't let their own personal biases twist the data to create harmful stereotypes. They must ensure anonymity. And they absolutely must avoid deceptive practices. Have you ever heard of shugging? It means selling under the guise of research. That's when a salesperson pretends to be doing a survey just to pressure you into buying something. It's totally unethical. Respecting consumer privacy isn't just a nice to have anymore. In many parts of the world, it is literally the law. Section 6, Takeaways and Final Reflection. Let's wrap this all up. All right, let's run through the absolute must-know foundations of this topic. Number 1, market research is your ultimate tool for mitigating business risk. Remember, don't make a new Coke mistake. Number 2, primary and secondary research aren't enemies, they're complementary. Start with secondary for the big picture, then use primary to fill in the exact gaps. Number 3, you need the how many of quantitative data and the why of qualitative data to see the whole puzzle. Number 4, choosing the correct sampling method, like stratified sampling, prevents incredibly costly statistical errors. And number 5, ethical guidelines and data privacy are non-negotiable, period. I want to leave you with a provocative thought, pulled straight from our real-world case studies. A while back, the UK government faced a massive public backlash for allowing the National Health Service to sell anonymized patient records to insurance companies. These private companies took this secondary data, things like illness and death rates organized by postal code, and used it to adjust their insurance premiums to maximize their own profits. So here's my question to you. Even if the data is totally anonymized,
Is it ethical for private companies to use your personal healthcare trends to decide how much you should pay for insurance? It's a heavy question, and it really highlights just how powerful and potentially dangerous market research can be today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the data around you.